So the holidays are not here yet, but if you have a dysfunctional family, it's already time to be thinking about them. Usually we have a lot of people reaching out either after Thanksgiving or after Christmas, devastated by how the holiday went again. And I would really love for people to think about this in advance so that maybe it doesn't have to be so awful this year. If you have a very loving, typical family, you maybe don't need this advice, but most people have difficult family members. Whether it's your own family, your extended family, sometimes you need to do some preventative work. You need to be thinking about things ahead. So what do you want to be different this year? As the holidays approach, think about what was awful last year. What do you wish changed? Who is responsible for some of that? What is your responsibility in some of that? And start putting together a plan. If it is awful, you can talk to your spouse about, do we have to do it the same? What can we be doing differently? If it is your in-laws that are a problem, sometimes it is easier for a family if the child of the dysfunctional people do the communicating. Sometimes the in-law is the outcast, right? So whoever it is easier to communicate with the family, that should be the contact person in most situations. But the holidays are also for you. Like, this is your Thanksgiving. This is your Christmas. You don't have to be miserable. You can think about your new little family and like, how do you want it to be different? Some people have a lot of travel plans, right? And like, if it's a 5-hour drive, there are some ages where that just doesn't work. And yeah, of course, no matter who your family is, they're going to be disappointed if you can't be there for the holidays. But some families are mean and they're going to say like, you know, that you're an awful person for doing this to them, as opposed to being like a kind mother who's thinking about your own child and what's best for them. And like, sometimes it doesn't work. And that's okay. If people are disappointed, they have to live with their own feelings. You don't have to be responsible for their feelings. So, you know, I had a very firm rule that for me, it was important that my child wake up in his own house every Christmas morning. And I was not going to be flexible on that. And that works for us. And some people feel bad doing that. And I think you just have to figure out what works for your family. So if it's easy for you to travel with all these gifts and do all these things, okay, then that works for you. If you're only doing that, even though it's horrible because otherwise your mother or your mother-in-law is angry with you, that is not a good reason to keep doing it. Okay, so what if you guys are not on the same page about this? You still have to compromise in some way. So if you guys feel very opposite, then maybe you flip-flop. Okay, this year we do it your way and next year we do it my way. Because it can't be that one of us is miserable every time and the other one is not. That is also not fair. So trying to figure out what works for your family might be harder if you're not on the same page, right? So what if your family is local and there are a lot of things you could do, right? How do you talk about this? How do you guys think about what's best for you? First of all, again, it is about communication. Everything goes back to communication, right? What are the expectations of both families? They are often very different. And most families think they're the important family. This is true for my family too. Like my mom's family mostly was gone by the time the kids came around. So we only had one side of the family mostly to go visit. So we did Thanksgiving with them. We did Christmas with them. So now that we're married, we all have to split, but we didn't learn that. We learned the Napletons are the family that you spend all the holidays with. So what do you do then? You have no practice. You got to learn how to practice, right? Okay. We go out of town for this one, or we do half of Thanksgiving here and half there. Well, what if you don't want to split? What if it's too hard on you or your little kids or whatever to go to 2 or 3 or 4 Thanksgivings? You guys have to talk about it and figure out what works. It is okay that people are disappointed with your decisions. It is okay. They will survive. They may be dramatic. I mean, it really depends on the emotional maturity of your family, right? For example, my mom is very flexible. She realizes we all have two families and we'll be together for some things and we won't be together for others. My mom is super flexible and she does not get angry at us for that. That is not always the case. Some moms are martyrs. Some people are, putting their desperation out there to their child, begging for all of the time. No one gets all of the time. No one gets all of the time. And it doesn't even have to be that you're splitting between two families. Maybe you don't want to see anybody. Maybe you just want to be with your little family for something. That's okay. That is a choice that you guys can make. Or like maybe you have teenagers that are in tournaments and can't go to things. Or, maybe college students can't come home for everything. You got to learn how to tolerate the disappointment. I mean, we want our kids to learn how to tolerate disappointment. Like, you can acknowledge that maybe it's hard for grandma or grandpa to tolerate this, but like, this is what we have to do. If you have dysfunctional family members who are going to be upset when you don't come or when you don't do things their way, why are you not just letting them be upset now? People try to avoid this person being upset in most situations. You can't avoid that. They are going to be upset when the world does not revolve around them. 100% of the time normally. So if it benefits you to figure out your plan now and express it now and let them deal with their own upset, you are more likely to be able to really choose what's best for your family. The other reason that we talk about doing in advance is when you try to do it last minute and you guys haven't thought about it, it's hard to get on the same page as your spouse. It's hard to prepare your kids. It feels meaner or ruder. I don't know that it really is, but it feels that way to just like put it out there at the last second and cancel on somebody, right? So if someone is, preparing food or buying things, you don't want to just not show up, right? That is on the more disrespectful side. But if you are telling them with plenty of notice, hey, this doesn't work this year, then it's not really well tolerated by an emotionally immature person, but it's out there and you're doing it right, even if they don't accept it. Another reason that I think it's so important to talk about it in advance is you do want to be on the same page as your spouse. You do want to have a plan for your holidays. You don't want to be trapped by the troubled person, right? So what happens is, like January 1st, I usually have so many calls that are like, this was horrible. I never want to do this again. And then nothing happens. I'm like, tell them now. Tell them now. Tell them with as much notice as possible. We aren't doing it this year. Let them manage their own feelings for all of it. But people are so afraid of upsetting the troubled person and getting the wrath of the troubled person that they avoid it. And then it gets closer and then they just go with it again. They just continue the pattern of being in this toxic holiday environment. And I get it's family. Sometimes you have to do that, but it doesn't have to be their way every single year. So you have the opportunity to advocate for yourself no matter what your situation. Like, for example, there are times where I did not come to Christmas when everybody else went to Christmas because that was nap time, right? And I was setting a different boundary because if my child didn't have a nap, it was going to be awful for him and me and the other people that he was bothering, right? So we would shift things, but I would just give notice, right? Like, hey, I know everyone's coming at 3, but he doesn't really wake up till 4, so we'll be there at 4:30. And that's just doing what's best for your family. Like, why should that be an issue? Why is that even hard? Why is that a problem? That seems so easy to be like, oh, that makes perfect sense. Okay, see you at 4:30. And if you have, a pretty typical person, they might respond that way. So I also suggest not being afraid to ask for what you need. Sometimes people are like, well, it's always been this way, so we should just do it this way. Like, yeah, but if you can make a mild change that benefits your family dramatically and no one even cares, why not just do it? But we get stuck in patterns, right? Well, everything always starts at 3, so we should be there at 3. Okay, maybe most years you can come at 3, but like, why not come at 4:30 this year? Is that a big deal? Probably not. You know, or like, we usually do breakfast for this. Could we do lunch this year? And it depends on the size of your family and how many people, but you can make changes. You can make requests. You can make requests. You can say, how about this instead? You could poll people. You can ask. There are other ways to do things. You don't always just have to go with the flow and do what's always been done. Changes are okay.